Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Directions Mag Geospatial webinar, today sponsored by our friends at Fulcrum. I'm Barbary Duke, Editor-in-Chief here at Directions Magazine with our webinar producer, Lynette Qualia. Thank you to the geospatial community for being loyal to us for 25 years now. Please continue to read feature articles, daily news, listen to podcasts, and watch more webinars at directionsmag.com. We are excited to welcome back Coleman McCormick, VP of Product Development from Fulcrum. He has information and demos to share with you all. And we really hope that you learn some new strategies for integrating field data and your SOPs with your GIS. So welcome back, Coleman. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to put this together. I think we've got some interesting, pretty interactive, pretty live demo stuff today that I'm going to show with quite a diverse set of examples and use cases that could be interesting to folks on the call. Hopefully it prompts some questions, and I'm happy to take questions kind of along the way as I'm going through the content as well. Introduction to myself, my name is Coleman McCormick. I'm the VP of Product here at Fulcrum. I lead our product team and design team and work a lot with our customers on the product design of Fulcrum and gathering customer feedback and everything kind of under the realm of product management and product development. So as a result of that, I've spent a lot of time over the years with customers, and I've seen many different challenges that different folks from different industries have in terms of field data collection, building out processes, optimizing things, and working with spatial data and maps kind of along the way. So, and I have a background in GIS and mapping too, so that helps to kind of have a sympathetic ear with a lot of these kinds of use cases as it pertains to integrating with GIS, things like that. So the quick agenda to run down what I'm going to talk about today. I have an opening section to cover a number of principles as we see them of field work and how we think about the challenges, how we address those challenges from a software standpoint, but also what we do in the product or our, I guess, best practices around field data collection in general, not even necessarily specific to our product, but what does it mean to work smarter in the kind of title of this talk, talking about just how do we think about making the best use of limited resources when it comes to field work, because anyone, all of you on the call, I'm sure, are familiar with many of the challenges and frictions that you experience trying to work on the go and in the field and mobile and things like that. Throughout the course of this, so I kind of have a section where I'm going to introduce a number of examples and use cases and things that you can do. You know, some of it's kind of tips and tricks, some of it is just samples of the type of thing you can do with external data and combining data sources and things like that while you're in the field to kind of enable or reinforce better quality data from the field. So I'm going to run through in the kind of second half of the presentation. I'll first give an example of I'll run through in text and slide form the things I'm going to show, and then I'll swap over to the actual live demo part, and you'll see in action a lot of those things I'm going to describe. So by way of quick introduction to Fulcrum itself, for anyone who's like less familiar, not familiar with Fulcrum already, Fulcrum, we think of it as a platform for all things field work, field data collection, field inspection, management, anything that you would have done historically with pen and paper or Excel or something like that, where you're out on the go having to capture information and documentation, can be digitized, built out, and customized in the Fulcrum platform for analysis, reporting, and kind of everything downstream, integration with other systems and things like that. So our goal, really kind of driving force of the company and the product, is to maximize field team performance and do so without burdening too much the company's kind of technical resources, and be able to do this with a project manager, someone who's not necessarily a developer, a database administrator, can build and deploy solutions tailored to your own business rules. We want to enable location data collection to those that are not necessarily GIS experts, right? Be able to collect and use location as an integral part of the data collection process. Ensure compliance or just conformation to standards and practices, which you do through kind of the way that you design and build what we call apps, kind of forms. Apps can be used interchangeably inside of Fulcrum, but ensure compliance and standards on how that data is captured. Seamlessly as possible, connect the back office and the field, and make the collaboration between the two more interactive and more two-way, instead of a kind of, that's sent out to the field, I'll see it in 2 weeks kind of a mentality. Making it more plug and play, where you can rely on field resources more for more like kind of ad hoc or on-demand work. And then just like be able to enable everything to be digital. Get away from paper as much as possible, paper or its substitutes like spreadsheets, and make it more available in real time to everyone in your organization. So I mentioned talking about some principles as we see them, sort of the guiding thinking in how we put together this product and design it for end users. We have a belief that, well, first of all, fieldwork is expensive, it's labor intensive, it's challenging in all sorts of ways. And that means there's a number of things we've got to think about when it comes to getting projects done, because it is invaluable and instrumental to your company when it's done well, and it can slow you down a lot immensely when it's not done well, and it can be a huge burden. So we think that data should be right the first time at the point of entry. No more rework, no more, oh wait, you forgot that, please go back out and capture it again. No revisits, things like that. That's something we're trying to enable every day. For the software to enable people to do it right the first time. We build everything around kind of end user first design thinking. We want the end user experience to be as easy to use as possible, because if there's resistance to adoption, if there's a desire not to use it, or it feels like the tool is getting in the way, or it's too complicated, people won't use it, or they certainly won't use it effectively, and that defeats the purpose of doing any of this at all. So we really pride ourselves on designing with kind of a mobile or field worker first mentality with respect to the actual data capture process. You want to, as much as possible, reduce from the beginning in your design of your process and your forms and your workflows, reduce the amount of typing or human, I guess, opportunity for error. Typing text or writing text on a piece of paper, that sort of thing is one that is a huge chance for there to be a error in the process. So we've got a number of features which I'll be showing throughout the course of this that help you do that, help you pre-fill and autofill things as much as possible. And then a couple of features that we'll talk about a little bit later around how you can optimize this for your business rules and your business processes. No two businesses do work the same. Everyone is slightly different. That makes it that means the way we put together Fulcrum is we build a tool that lets you build your solution to your business problem. And we want it to be, this last bullet, as simple as possible to iterate and adapt to either changing requirements or changing feedback from the field or what have you, we want it to be as fast as possible to make iterations and evolve your procedure and not make it kind of fixed and heavy and too complicated to change when you realize there's an improvement to be made. So what do we mean when we say smarter about field work? So kind of what I mentioned before, the working in the field, it's a constrained environment. The field technician or engineer doesn't have access to everything. You've got limited resources, time is short, and your attention is limited. Oftentimes, someone in the field doing another activity, digging a trench, climbing a telephone pole, doing something else that's important that isn't typing data into a computer or something like that. So we want it to be as easy as possible to kind of be comfortable with that for users. We want as much as possible, kind of in the title of this talk, data in the field, be able to arm field resources with data, documents, procedures, anything we can that helps them do the job faster, seamlessly at the ready. So things like lookup tables for data integrated into your apps, map layers that you can use for reference, some things we'll go through. We want that stuff ready in, as I said here, as few clicks as possible, ready to get to, not buried in the truck somewhere. Something that's kind of not necessarily field exclusive, but it's related. It's important to set your teams up for success. So building and testing and optimizing forms before they're deployed and expected to be used by your entire staff, kind of iterating through those and optimizing that workflow with your people that will actually be using them, just to make sure they actually fit the real world. When you're out there doing inspections, reality doesn't look like the way that you think about it in the conference room all the time. So making it back to that adaptable point that I made, you want it to be, we want to make it easy to make changes and make updates and react to what your teams are experiencing. And then this is kind of central to everything Fulcrum, is to be data-driven and not document-driven. So we don't want, a lot of customers come from doing things with pen and paper or fillable PDFs or something like this, where there's the artifact at the end of the day is a document, which is not easily searchable. It's not easily reportable. Fulcrum, we want to do both. We want to be able to produce documents or documentation when needed, but also store everything in a data archive where it's easy to report on, it's transparent to everyone that needs it in the organization, and you have a historical kind of record of everything that's happened. A couple of customer examples here I thought would be helpful to give some context. We have a customer, Tilson Tech, out of Maine, that does well, a host of different services, but typically around construction and telecom industry. They actually do a lot of the work. I'll be showing some demos around, but they've been able to make massive strides with Fulcrum based on a lot of the things I've just mentioned. The ability to kind of unify all of their different tools and technologies that they need into a single unit, single app, eliminating like lack of visibility of data between teams, and being able to kind of have the field and the office interconnected and more in real time, collaborating with one another instead of the kind of an us versus them, approach to their work. Another one kind of in a different vein is Wonderful Orchards that out of California, part of the Wonderful company, which some may be familiar with, works in the agriculture space. One thing that they benefit from enormously and love about Fulcrum is the ease of use factor. They have a lot of staff that are kind of hourly workers, people that are coming and going. They need for training to be as simple as possible and to be able to rapidly scale up new team members. And the way that they've built everything, they've got multilingual apps that they've built in Fulcrum. They've got apps built for probably dozens of different use cases now. So the kind of adaptability and diversity of things that can be solved with Fulcrum is really on display here. So yeah, some benefits of having a platform for the way that Fulcrum kind of is a platform for a number of different values. And then I'll demo some of these things. You can preload data, you can preload maps, feed your team with GIS content that that will be useful for field data collection. Speed is of the essence with everything. We want it to be easy to, if we need an extra 5 fields in a form, easy for someone to add them, save it, and deploy to the field in minutes, and not take days for that to happen. And we want, for, like I said at the beginning, not require rework and constant edits and modifications and corrections to have to happen. To, as much as possible, prevent incorrect data at the source. So to stage this up a little bit, I've got a couple of examples that I'm going to use as much as possible, the same couple of use cases to showcase a lot of these demos. One is a pole inspections example, where a case where you've got an inventory list, an asset inventory database that you want to conduct inspections on. So there's a number of different ways to do this. I'm going to show one method that leverages a couple of these interesting possibilities for kind of, some of this is sort of in the more advanced category, but powerful functionality. So conducting inspections on that inventory using reference map layers. There's a whole layers functionality in Fulcrum that lets you bring in data sources from ArcGIS, WMS, offline maps, anything that you'd find useful, or that your field workers would find useful to reference as they're walking the streets doing their work, right? Do they need a power line, GIS layer for reference, parcels layer, whatever it is. Querying data from external sources. So I have an example of pulling the current weather conditions. Some types of audits require that. Not that that's relevant necessarily in all pole inspection applications, but just for the sake of being able to show that, we'll walk through that. And then we have a workflow engine in Fulcrum that lets you define your own rules for sending notifications, like to email or SMS, where based on a specific set of conditions, you can trigger events to happen. And then I've got a damage assessment use case where we can look at some data enrichment examples of being able to pull in. So if I'm doing a damage assessment on a residence, like a post-storm event or something, that'll pull from the FEMA database the current flood zone designation for a property. And so that's an example of hitting in this case, it's an Esri ArcGIS Online web service, and fetching the current zone that sits in, at the location that the collector would be at. And then sort of a similar example with parcel information from a service called Regrid, where they aggregate parcel information from municipalities around the country, and they provide a web service to allow lookups for parcel info, like property owner, zoning, things like that. So a little bit of detail on these examples. Fulcrum supports a mapping and base map functionality. I mentioned this already, but we've got an example with weather data from a WMS source, drone imagery, or any kind of imagery really that you can provide from a tiled base map resource or WMS can be loaded into Fulcrum and used as a reference. And then kind of going the other direction, we have a functionality to allow you to share your data from Fulcrum out as a map layer using Esri feature services and load. I have an example showing it in ArcGIS Online, but it can be loaded anywhere that supports feature services like ArcGIS Desktop, QGIS, applications like that. On data enrichment, this is one of the most interesting of the kind of selection of things I'm showing today. We'll look at, in the poll inventory example, how to build lookup tables using record links in Fulcrum. That allows you to reference the data in one app within your inspection app, and I'll show that. It'll hopefully make more sense than me explaining it. The weather data lookup, Esri REST services, some things with calculation fields, and then the point and polygon query. That's really what I was talking about with the parcel lookups and the hitting the FEMA services for flood zone information. And then workflows, being able to send email alerts, and not only emails, and you can customize the body of those emails, which I'll look at. You can also send PDF reports. So if you've got a report kind of built out in our report engine, which you can build your own custom report, or we can help you build one, you can have that automatically sent based on data-driven rules and not manually having to be sent by somebody. I will start with some comments on the layers functionality that we just talked about. So to look at the weather example, and I'll pull up the poll inspection data. So here's what I was referring to with the polls example. We've got the full inventory, and if I pull this up, this is in our app builder. This is a data set that I imported that really is intended for lookup. So we don't want, in the way I've set this up, we don't want the users editing this directly, this inventory. We want them doing inspections and referencing these polls. So this is just basic kind of facts and figures about the polls. And if I go back and I pull up my poll inspection app, this is where we're actually conducting a condition assessment on the poll. In here we have a record link. So this is how we do using a record link, we can do effectively a lookup on the poll referencing that poll inventory. So this field is linked over to that other poll inventory app. And I have it set up to, this has a number of settings that allows you to change the behavior of how this works. But what I want to be doing in my example is I want my field worker to be presented with a list of all the available polls by ID tag number, type it in or scroll through the list and find it. And when they choose it, what it'll do, there's settings here to allow auto population. So it'll pull the value from the master and insert it onto my inspection form, so that I don't have to have people going out and which poll are you inspecting, and they're retyping the same things that I already have in my master list. And in just a moment, we'll pull this up and we'll look at how that works in the next section. I just wanted to give you a sense for what I'm going to pull up here to look at the layers. We'll go here and we'll look at the Fulcrum data view. So we've got a number of options here for viewing by table split view, which I'm looking at now, where I can see a map and a table, and just a table view if I want to look at it that way. But on my map, I can pull up different layers that I've added. These layers are from this power lines layer is a WMS source. So this is loading from, I believe it's an Esri hosted WMS layer. All of what I'm showing here is also available on mobile. I'm really showing it on my computer and in the browser because it's a larger screen and easier to see. But this can be done from the field in the mobile app as well. So here, if I'm out doing inspections, I can reference where the actual power lines are if I want to. And then the weather example, this is also a WMS layer. The trick with this is if there's clear weather nearby, it's not going to show anything, but and it's takes a little time to load usually, but it'll overlay the basically weather radar on your map. So it's kind of an interesting ability to do that, really just showing that, I'm not seeing load here, but it lets you load anything that's a WMS source. You can bring into Fulcrum and use it for reference, and you can bring in as many as you want, and it'll overlay them in the order here, so I can, you know, move these up and down if I wanted to. Another resource we have is the ability to do TMS layers, tile map services. I believe this one here is one. Find where it is. This is actually a drone image posted on a tiled map service. But if I have imagery like that posted in that type of live service, I can load it in here, and now I can do my data collection on live imagery that I've just captured. And that could be from a drone, this image from a drone, or it could be satellite imagery, aerial, whatever you have that would be most relevant. So let's go back to my other example here. So what I'm looking at here is what we call a view in Fulcrum. So when I go into this interface, I can modify the rules of what is visible. So this is showing everything with a status that says needs review. So the status field in this particular app is needs review, failed, needs inspection, or passed. So I can change these, and it'll live update the map to include my selection. After you change that, and then you can set that on multiple columns, so I can hide things if I don't want to see them. And then I can save that as a view. This one's already saved, and there's a view called needs review that I've saved here. If I hit this, you can see the details of this. Go back to it here. Well, change the status. So then when we save it, you'll see here that a shared view in Fulcrum supports a number of different sharing options, one of which is a feature service. So I actually already have this loaded in ArcGIS Online map. So this data right here, this is showing this layer called Fulcrum Inspections is my live data coming from Fulcrum. So when this is set up, someone who's only looking at data through ArcGIS viewpoint like this, someone in a different part of your organization may not even know what Fulcrum is, may not be involved in field work. They could be getting, if this data is included in there as a live linked data source, they'll get updates from the field as they're happening. So if something, you know, changed status based on someone's field inspection, and they refresh the page, it'll be reflected in this map. It's something we built and launched a year ago or so, and it's an interesting way to allow you to interlink Fulcrum and anything that supports feature services. In this case, I'm using ArcGIS Online. But so we have a couple of questions here that are pertinent because I'm talking about this. But one is, do the WMS layers have to be public in order to use them? Right now, yes, currently. We don't support authentication on WMS yet, but it's something we'll look at down the road. Most of the ones we've found that we've used, like the ones I'm using in these examples, are public data sources. So yes, they do have to be public. Another one is, can these layers easily be exported as KMZ or shapefile? And that answer to that is that my Fulcrum data can be. So the data set I'm looking at here, I can export in, if that's what's being referred to, I've got a bunch of different formats I can export to, including shapefile and KML, KMZ, same thing. You can download, when you do that, it downloads what's in your current view. So you'd want to clear out your filters if you want to download everything. But if the question's referring to the other layers I have, this line layer for power lines, it can be downloaded from the source that it's hosted in. So that's in an ArcGIS database. In this case, it could be downloaded as those formats from there. Okay, what next here? Let's move on to looking at the enrichment examples I had. So back to the example of the pole inspection record link that I was talking about. And actually I could show this on my mobile because it's more realistic to what's happening in the field with field team. This, bear with me here. Well, might not be able to get it to work. I can show it here anyway. So if I were to create a new record somewhere, create a new inspection, the first field wants me to select a pole. So what the user would do is tap select pole and then type the ID here, and it'll filter down based on their typing. When they've picked that pole, based on the pre-fill settings that I configured in this app, it pulls in these values from that reference data set. So the user doesn't have to type these in. This one's read-only. You can make the others read-only if you want to as well. But then they can go down and they do their inspection just like normal, adding photos and things. And here's where it's actually loading from that weather API some weather data in real time anytime I change the record location in the same location, so it may not change. Yeah, that's loading from that data source. Save it. Anytime, one of the interesting things about being able to load data from an external source, like the weather example, is because Fulcrum has a rule, like visibility rules built into it, I can have visibility, I can have certain questions that only are dependent on specific values. So, silly example, but if I had, I could create a rule that says only ask this question if the weather is sunny today or something like that. API-driven query data can drive what the form actually asks to your user. We had a question someone asked, is it possible to upload polylines to the app? Not yet, but that's something that's coming in the next couple of quarters. That's in our roadmap to actually support line and polygon data for these. So you see points here, they could be lines or polygons. So I could perhaps have an inspection report on the line segments themselves or something like that. That's something that we're working on as we speak. All right, so I showed a record linking. Let's look at the my other example, my damage assessments example. So here I'll pull up one that I already did because I know it worked. When I pin this location, doing a damage assessment, it's calling out to that FEMA web service to insert the flood zone information. And again, this is interesting. You know, it's interesting to me in a kind of workflow where you could drive different form logic based on the flood zone of the property without the user having to do anything, without the collector having to do anything. So, and it can, because it's hitting an interactive service, FEMA's updating those flood maps year in and year out. If you're just hitting the right service, could give you different values on different days, depending on the current state of the flood zone map. So I just like that we can take things that used to be static and used to be, you know, literally paper maps or something that I had to have with me, is happening automatically. It's hitting the source of truth directly. It's not waiting for me to have to know the answer while I'm in the field. And it can drive that logic in real time to kind of adapt my form to the conditions on the ground, as it were. I have an example here too of parcel data. So this is pretty neat. So like I mentioned, we are using here a service called Regrid, which is it's a company that provides this as an API. I believe it's commercial, pay for it, pay for access to it. But whenever if I'm to do a inspection, this could be for any use case where you might want property owner information. When I pin to the map, anytime I change the location, it's going to do a query. It's effectively like similar to geocoding, but point and polygon query. It's going to look what parcel shape is this actually falling within. So if I change this, it should update live. So that's super powerful, and it's powerful in this case of parcels because this data is quite fragmented. Depending on where you are, you're hitting totally different resources. So Regrid provides a service where it's consolidated into a single API for the whole nation. They might even have coverage outside of the U.S. now. I'm not totally sure, but I'm here more showing the example of how that lookup happens. And I'll show real quick the how we're doing this. And I have a link at the end of the presentation that where to get to some of these examples. We have code examples and things in our documentation of I believe most of these exact cases that you can go experiment with and try yourself. So we're using a functionality in Fulcrum called data events. Data events are kind of like a extensible way to write scripts that add functionality to the mobile app, or really to the entire application, but really we built it so that it could work on mobile as well as web. So you write what's effectively like our own flavor of JavaScript to hit this API and pull back this data. And every time, there's a number of events you can wire into, like every time the user changes the location, anytime the record is updated, it calls that event, that data event. Very, very powerful framework to add your own business logic on top of Fulcrum and basically modify the behavior of the mobile application to your own needs. So let's see here. I will now, let's look at workflows. So my pole inspection example, where someone might go and mark, let's go to all inspections. Oops, wrong location. With workflows, I'll pull this up here to show you how this is configured. So at the app level, each app can have its own workflow rules configured. So I've got one set up here called inspection needs review. So this runs every time an inspection is marked with the status it needs review, this workflow will trigger. So if I open up this configuration here, the way workflows work is you set a triggering event. You can set a filter to take the record that was just appeared in the trigger, filter on it, does it meet this certain set of other criteria, and then do an action based on that. So in my example, every time a record's created or updated, pass it through this filter. Does the status, if the status equals needs review, then do this, right? And it says we have email, webhook, and SMS supported today, something we're kind of exploring, expanding on in the future. But every time that workflow runs, send this email. And here you can customize the body of the email, the subject, the recipient. And I've actually set it to include a PDF report as well. So when the conditions met, this will happen automatically. So let's see if we can make this work. I've got a example here, this one. So let's say they're doing the inspection. They filled this out, they've uploaded a photo, and they say this needs review. And now there's my email that it sent. And it used the body of the email that the kind of template that I put in the Fulcrum workflow. We also have included a link to the record, so right away they can open this up and look at it and see it in kind of a view only mode. Someone could look at it that way, or because we included a PDF, they don't even need Fulcrum, they can just open this and look at that in PDF form. So you could set up rules that escalate high priority tickets or high priority issues to a distribution list or something like that, to people who don't even have access to the Fulcrum. They can be made aware of issues and be able to take action on issues in real time, literally as they're happening. So that I could have done, that inspection could have happened in real time out in the field somewhere, and someone could be made aware of it, and therefore they could, you know, literally call the technician while they're still on site and take action, do something, whatever they want to do. The situational awareness is there and made available to everyone kind of as needed. Someone asked a question for my parcel example, will the owner information populate if you preload locations? That's a good question. I think based on how that data event's written right now, it won't, because it's waiting for the location to move, to change, which means either created new or moved from existing. But it might be possible to rewrite it to do that. I'm not sure. That's a question I could follow up on. So in summary, just to cover, kind of review back on some of these examples I've talked about, we're trying to support as much as possible an extensible and adaptable framework and platform to build tools for field workers, so that are adaptable, that are easy to modify if something's needs to be changed, plug the field and the office together more interactively. That's what we're after. So I tried to put together some examples here that show this in action, how you can really get under the hood and build some powerful stuff. We have a documentation page that I've linked to on the last slide that has a lot of examples, kind of in the same vein of what I'm showing, or what I was showing today, but it can spark your imagination on lots of things that might be relevant in your particular use cases. And we're really interested in people getting the most out of their field data collection work, right? So anything that can optimize and smooth out that process means people can get more done per day. You know, if you can do 20 inspections instead of 12 or 15, and aggregate that over 20 people in 3 months, like the amount of productivity increase is just enormous. And that's not even getting to the fact that we can do additional enriched and deeper content, richer detail than we could before with photos and things like that. And really, tips like these are how we can help customers to leverage the existing investments that they have and get more out of what they're already spending on field work and field data collection. We want people to be able to not only do more with what they've already got, but be more motivated to even invest more in their field work because it's actually paying off, right? It's not just a cost. So here I just wanted to include that there's a Fulcrum's available, free trial. You go to our website, anyone can try it for free for 30 days if you don't already have access to it or you're not already a customer. That's a review slide, but yeah. And then any other questions? Here's some information. I'll leave this up as we continue talking here. docs.fulcrumapp.com, that's the source for a lot of the examples that I showed today. I'm not sure every one of them's there, but most of them are there in some capacity to try for yourself. And you can take them, you can modify them to kind of fit your particular example. And then there's my contact info as well. If feel free, if there's any follow-up questions that you think of later or want to hit me directly for more detail, feel free. Anyone here is welcome to email me directly with any questions. We do have a couple other questions I can cover with the last few minutes that we've got. Someone asked, are you only able to update or refresh Fulcrum field data while in the field with it linked to ArcGIS Pro or with ArcMap as well? I'm not sure the answer. I think it depends on what ArcMap supports as far as data sources. The thing that I showed, the layer type I showed, it's using Esri feature services. And I don't remember if ArcMap supports that. ArcGIS Pro definitely does. ArcMap, I'm not certain, but I can find that out. We also had a question on what was the weather API used in the form. I think it's called weatherapi.com, if I'm not mistaken. Just gonna pull it up here. Let's see. It's using data events also to call that. Weatherapi.com, yep. So yeah, it fetches the data. There may even be more data available than what I showed in that example. This is just pulling these few values that you get back. Yeah, powerful stuff. The fact that you can really hit anything that has an API. So you can get creative with it. And we've had customers use all kinds of things that I've never even seen before in real time. People even use the Fulcrum as something we call the query API, which is basically a way to query your data from outside Fulcrum, query into Fulcrum and get data out. People have queried their Fulcrum data within Fulcrum to do kind of different things, either with reports or inside data events and things. So, it's a set of Legos. You can take it and you can build a lot of interesting things on top of these different tools. Any other questions?
I've got one more over here. So this person says, I've got a mix of Esri and open source. How do I help those teams work together?
Yes, because Fulcrum supports, we try as much as possible to support open standards and as many open standards as we can. So when you saw the download function where I showed all the different formats that we support, we're trying to be as open as possible with where you can get your data to, right, from Fulcrum. And so open source we in the world of GIS, you've got Postgres, you've got PostGIS, you've got QGIS, a number of other common examples of open source GIS stuff. And those all support a number of the different formats that we support. So GeoJSON, CSV, shapefiles, even Esri feature services you can use now in QGIS, which wasn't possible some number of years ago, but is now. So yeah, it doesn't matter. It could be a mixed environment. We're trying to support as much as we possibly can of getting data out of Fulcrum, make it useful, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want data to go into a silo.
Absolutely. Well, and nobody has one solution working in their shop anyway.
Right.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, these are all great questions, folks. If you do have any others, I'd encourage you to reach out to Coleman via his email address there. Coleman, great job. We really appreciate all the demos and information. I think everybody probably did learn a few new things.
Hope so. There's a lot to be learned.
Absolutely. Always stuff to learn in GIS. Appreciate Kurt and Jessica's support on our webinar today as well. Go make it a great day, everyone. We hope that you will tell a friend about Fulcrum and Directions Magazine. Thanks, everybody.